The annual Founders Day Gala was planned for the last week of July at the Willowbrook Estates HOA Clubhouse in Lake Geneva. 3 generations of the Patterson family all gathering to celebrate the neighborhood's milestone anniversary under the watchful eye of our beloved HOA. Reservation for the clubhouse access passes and the full week of events had been coordinated through a group chat I'd been quietly removed from after asking one too many questions about the escalating fees. I'd booked my own pass, separately same clubhouse, different confirmation number. I preferred it that way. When I pulled into the circular driveway in my aging Subaru, my brother Derek was already standing near the entrance with his wife Brittany. They were unloading matching Louis Vuitton luggage from their Range Rover like they were checking into the Ritz instead of a glorified community center with a pool that cost extra. Derek saw me and his expression soured immediately. "Really, Maya? You actually showed up." I stepped out, pulling my simple black rolling suitcase behind me. "Of course I came. It's the neighborhood anniversary gala. Everyone's been planning for months." He laughed harsh and sudden. "We thought you'd have the sense to skip it, given the circumstances." "What circumstances?" Brittany adjusted her designer sunglasses. "The circumstances where you can barely afford to be here. This gala pass is $400 minimum, Maya, and that's before the resort-style activities your dad has on the schedule: golf tournament, spa days, wine tasting, the works." I kept my voice even. "I'm aware of the rates." Derek looked at my car, my suitcase, my simple cotton dress like they were personal insults. "You're going to stick out like a sore thumb all week. Designer dinners, private beach access, championship golf course. How exactly are you planning to pay for all that?" "I have savings." Brittany snorted. "Savings, right? Listen, we're not trying to be mean, but this is embarrassing for all of us. You showing up in your teacher clothes with your teacher car, counting pennies while the rest of us are trying to enjoy a luxury community event. The HOA has standards, you know. Then don't be embarrassed." "I'll keep to myself." Derek stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Look, there's a motel about 15 miles from here, much more your speed. You could still come to the anniversary dinner on Saturday, but the rest of the week you could just not be here. I already had my pass, which they clearly assumed I couldn't afford." "Maya, come on, be realistic." My sister Charlotte emerged from the lobby, her heels clicking on the marble. She took one look at me and sighed deeply. "Oh no, Maya, what are you doing here?" "She has a pass," Derek said. "I'm trying to convince her to cancel it." Charlotte's perfectly made-up face creased with worry. "Maya, sweetie, did you talk to Dad? Because he specifically said he didn't think you should come. He didn't want you to feel pressure to spend money you don't have on HOA events that are clearly above your pay grade." "Dad said that." "Well, Mom said it, but Dad agreed." Charlotte touched my arm gently, her manicured nails bright red. "We love you, you know that, but this week is going to be expensive, and we know preschool teachers don't make much. We don't want you going into debt just to keep up appearances with the neighborhood." "I'm not going into debt." "Then how are you paying for this?" Derek challenged. "Seriously, Maya, show us your bank statement. Prove you can actually afford to be here." "I don't need to prove anything to you." "See, because you can't." He turned to Charlotte. "She can't afford it. She's going to put it all on credit cards and then spend the next 5 years paying it off. It's irresponsible." My father appeared in the doorway, his golf shirt crisp and his expression stern. Behind him, my mother wore a flowing resort dress and matching concern. "Why?" Dad's voice had that disappointed tone I'd heard my entire childhood. "We need to talk." "About what?" "About this." He gestured vaguely at me, at my car, at everything. "Charlotte told us you were still planning to come despite our conversation." "We didn't have a conversation." "Charlotte had a conversation with me where she suggested I shouldn't come because we're worried about you." Mom stepped forward, her voice pleading. "Honey, this gala costs a fortune. Every meal, every activity, every little HOA add-on. We don't want you to bankrupt yourself trying to keep up with everyone, especially not with Karen Whitaker watching every move." Karen Whitaker, the HOA president herself, had been circling like a shark in designer heels all morning, enforcing her precious community standards. I wasn't trying to keep up with anyone. "Then why are you here?" Dad's question was sharp. "If you're not trying to prove something, why insist on coming to a gala you clearly can't afford? You could celebrate the anniversary at the dinner on Saturday, without spending thousands of dollars you don't have on a week of luxury amenities. He crossed his arms. Maya, I'm going to be blunt. We don't want you here. Not because we don't love you, but because we don't want you embarrassing yourself or the family in front of the entire neighborhood, especially not with Karen already complaining about your lawn being 0.2 inches too long last month. The words hung in the air. Embarrassing you, I repeated slowly. You know what I mean? But his eyes shifted away from mine. You're a teacher. You make what, 40,000 a year, maybe 50. And you're standing here at an HOA event where people drop that much in a week on activities alone. You don't belong here, and deep down you know it. Brittany nodded supportively. It's like if I try to hang out with actual celebrities. Sure, I could technically be in the same room, but everyone would know I didn't belong. It would be awkward for everyone, and Karen would have a field day with her clipboard. We just want to enjoy this week, Charlotte added, without worrying about you, without feeling guilty every time we order the premium wine or book the private spa treatment, because we know you're sitting in your room counting dollars and probably racking up another fine for your car being parked 2 inches over the line. I won't be in my room counting dollars. Then what will you be doing? Derek demanded. Because all the activities Dad planned are expensive. The golf tournament entry alone is $300 per person. The wine tasting is $200. The sunset yacht cruise on the lake is $500. Are you going to sit them all out? Just wander around the clubhouse by yourself while the family does things together? Or worse, try to join in and put it all on credit cards? Brittany added, which is just sad, Maya. Really sad, and exactly the kind of thing Karen loves to write up as a violation of aesthetic standards. My mother's eyes were wet. We're saying this out of love. We don't want you to spend the next year digging yourself out of debt because you were too proud to admit you couldn't afford a neighborhood event. Find a motel you can afford, Dad said firmly. Something reasonable. You can still come to the anniversary dinner, but the rest of the week you need to go. This isn't your world, Maya. It never has been, and Karen would agree. She's already threatened to call an emergency board meeting if you don't comply with the dress code and vehicle guidelines. I looked at each of them and turned Derek with his arms crossed, confident in his superiority. Brittany, checking her phone, already bored. Charlotte, looking sympathetic, but immovable. Mom, wringing her hands, worried, but agreeing. Dad, standing rigid, waiting for me to comply. And somewhere in the background, I could feel Karen Whitaker's eyes on us, ready to pounce with another citation. Okay, I said quietly. Dad blinked. Okay, I'll leave. You won't be embarrassed by me. Relief flooded their faces. Mom actually smiled. Oh, honey, I'm so glad you're being reasonable about this. We'll see you on Saturday for the dinner, and it'll be lovely. No pressure, no stress, and hopefully no more fines from Karen. Sure, Mom. I got back in my Subaru, started the engine, and drove out of the circular driveway. In my rearview mirror, I saw them already moving toward the entrance, laughing about something, the tension dissolving like it had never happened. I drove exactly 1 mile down the road to the coffee shop in the small town center, ordered a latte, sat down at a window table with my phone, and made a call. Good morning, Miss Reynolds. James Hendricks answered on the first ring. James was the regional director for Grandview Management, LLC, the company that held the exclusive contract to run every single HOA in the Willowbrook portfolio, including the flagship Willowbrook Estates, where my family and Karen Whitaker were currently enjoying their little power trip. How can I help you, Maya? Hi, James. I need you to pull up the reservation for the Patterson Family Gala Pass and all associated activities. It should be under Gerald Patterson. One moment, I heard typing. Yes, I have it. Party of 23 booked through Saturday. Presidential Clubhouse, Suite, 4 luxury day passes, and 6 standard event tickets. Very nice group booking. I need you to flag it. Flag it? How? Owner review. All charges, all activities, all privileges. I want to be notified of every single thing they do this week, including any complaints from Karen Whitaker. There was a pause. Is there a problem? Let's call it due diligence. How many complaints has this property received in the past quarter? Willowbrook, maybe 3 or 4. Nothing major. I'm serious. And how many has it received about the Patterson party specifically, or any involvement from the HOA president? None that I'm aware of, but they just checked in 20 minutes ago. Right. Well, keep me updated. If there are any issues with guest behavior, staff treatment, anything at all, especially if Karen starts throwing her weight around, I want to know immediately. Of course, Miss Reynolds. I'll make sure the property director is aware. Thank you, James. I ended the call and sipped my latte. Through the window, I could see the lake sparkling in the distance. The Willowbrook Estates clubhouse sat on the northern shore, all glass and engineered elegance, with its private beach championship golf course and spa facilities that the HOA loved to brag about while fining residents for having the wrong flower color in their beds. I bought the parent company 3 years ago. Well, I bought the management firm that controlled 7 premium HOA communities across the Midwest, including this one. The total acquisition had cost me $42 million, funded by the tech company sale that my family still knew nothing about because I'd never told them. After teaching preschool for 6 years, I'd spent my evenings building an educational software platform, something I genuinely cared about that helped teachers manage classrooms more effectively. I worked on it alone at first, then hired developers as it gained traction. Within 3 years, we had 12,000 schools using it. When a major education technology corporation offered to buy it, I'd said yes. The sale netted me $68 million after taxes. I kept teaching for another year because I loved it. Then I'd quietly transitioned to consulting and started investing. Real estate felt tangible, understandable. HOA management seemed like a natural fit, especially after years of watching Karen Whitaker turn community living into a dictatorship of beige paint and perfectly manicured lawns. The Grandview management chain was struggling when I bought it. Good properties, poor oversight, no vision. I'd replaced the executive team, upgraded facilities, and implemented new training programs for staff that actually treated residents like humans instead of walking rule violations. Within 2 years, we were profitable again. Within 3, we were thriving. My family knew I'd changed jobs. They knew I did something with consulting. They'd never asked for details, and I'd never offered them. When I showed up in my sensible car, wearing Target dresses, they made assumptions. I'd let them. Now I was wondering if that had been a mistake. My phone rang. James Hendricks again. That was fast. You're going to want to hear this. He sounded tense. I just got a call from Margaret. She's the property director at Willowbrook. Apparently your father demanded to speak with management about 10 minutes ago. About what? He's claiming there was a booking error. Says a pass was reserved under the name Maya Reynolds, and he wants it canceled immediately. Says the person who booked it isn't actually coming, and he doesn't want to be charged for a plus. He wants Karen to sign off on a formal violation for you parking in a lot. I closed my eyes. What did Margaret tell him? That she couldn't cancel a reservation without authorization from the guest who made it. He got aggressive, started saying he's the head of the family party, that he should have authority over all the bookings, that it's ridiculous an HOA management company wouldn't listen to a guest spending over $50,000 for the week on activities and dues. $50,000? I whistled. He's really going all out. Apparently Margaret held firm on policy, but he's demanding to speak to her supervisor. He's in the lobby right now, making a scene, and Karen Whitaker is right beside him, nodding along like the dutiful enforcer she is. Other residents are starting to notice. I see. I stood up from the coffee shop table. Tell Margaret I'm coming back. 20 minutes. You're coming here? I own the company, James. I can come whenever I want. I heard him smile. Fair point. I'll let her know. The drive back to the clubhouse took 15 minutes. I parked in the owner's reserved spot, a space my family and Karen would have walked right past without noticing, and entered through the side entrance that led directly to the administrative offices. Margaret Chin was in her office on the phone, looking stressed. She was 53, brilliant at her job, and had been with Grandview for 6 years, 3 before my acquisition and 3 after. We'd worked closely during the renovation process. She knew my family was here. She didn't know they were my family. She looked up when I walked in, and relief flooded her face. She wrapped up her call quickly. Miss Reynolds, thank goodness. James filled me in. Is your father still in the lobby? Your father? She blinked. Gerald Patterson is your father? Unfortunately. Oh no. Oh, Miss Reynolds, I'm so sorry. If I'd known you handled it exactly right. Don't apologize. I sat down across from her desk. Tell me what happened. She explained the confrontation. Dad had approached the desk, demanding the cancellation. When the front desk clerk explained they needed authorization from the guest who made the reservation, he'd raised his voice. Said it was absurd that management wouldn't work with its biggest spender of the week, implied the clerk was being difficult on purpose, demanded a manager. Margaret had come out, reiterated the policy, and offered to try calling the guest to request authorization. Dad had refused, saying it was unnecessary that he was telling them to cancel it, and that should be enough, especially with Karen Whitaker standing there threatening to add it to my permanent record. He's still out there, Margaret said. Sitting in the lobby with your mother and siblings, and Karen complaining loudly about poor customer service. Other guests are starting to notice, and Karen is loving every second of it. She keeps muttering about aesthetic violations and how your car is lowering property values. I see. I stood up. Let me handle this. Are you sure? I can have security. No security. Not yet. Let me talk to them first. I walked down the hallway, toward the lobby, my footsteps silent on the plush carpeting. Through the glass doors, I could see my family clustered near the fireplace. Dad was gesturing emphatically while talking to Derek. Mom looked embarrassed. Charlotte was on her phone. Karen Whitaker stood beside them, clipboard in hand, looking like she'd just won the HOA lottery. I pushed open the doors and walked straight to the front desk. The clerk, a young woman named Sarah who'd been with us for 8 months, looked relieved to see me. Miss Reynolds, she said quietly. I'm so sorry about the situation. You did great, Sarah. Don't worry. I raised my voice slightly. Now I understand there's an issue with a reservation. Dad's head snapped up. He strode over to the desk, ready for another fight. Finally, someone with authority. He didn't even look at me, his eyes on Sarah. I need you to cancel a pass made under the name Maya Reynolds. The guest isn't coming, and I refuse to pay for an empty slot, especially with Karen here to witness the violation. I can't cancel that reservation, sir, I said calmly. Why not? I'm telling you she's not coming because the guest who made the reservation is standing right here. He turned to me, then really looked at me for the first time since I'd entered. Why? What are you doing here? I thought you left. I did leave. I came back. Why would you? He stopped, confused. Wait, did you talk to them? Did you convince them to let you stay? I don't need anyone's permission to stay here, Dad. Yes, you do. I'm not paying for your pass. You want to be here so badly you can pay for it yourself. I'm paying for it myself. I always was. With what money? Derek had joined us, now Brittany at his elbow. Karen Whitaker hovered behind them, smirking. Maya, seriously, this is getting pathetic. Just admit you can't afford this place and go before Karen has to write you up again. I can afford it. Stop lying. Dad's voice was rising. Other guests were definitely watching now. We all know you barely make enough to cover rent. You drive a 15-year-old car. You shop at Target. You're a preschool teacher, for God's sake, and Karen has been documenting your violations for months. I was a preschool teacher. Now I'm an HOA management owner. The silence was immediate and total. Charlotte laughed nervously. What? I own this management company and 6 others. I turned to Sarah. Sarah, can you pull up the ownership records for Grandview Management Willowbrook branch? She typed quickly, her fingers shaking slightly. Yes, ma'am. Property managed by Grandview Management LLC. Principal owner Maya Elizabeth Reynolds. That's not possible. Dad's face was white. It's very possible. I bought the company 3 years ago after selling my educational software business. The sale netted me $68 million. I invested $42 million of it in acquiring Grandview Management. Mom made a small sound like air escaping. You sold a business. Charlotte's voice was faint. What business? Classroom Connect. It's an educational platform used by about 40,000 schools now. I built it while teaching. Sold it in 2022. Derek was shaking his head. No, this is some kind of joke. It's not a joke. Margaret had appeared beside me, her expression professional, but her eyes sharp. Miss Reynolds has owned these management contracts for 3 years. She's been an excellent owner, very hands-on during renovations, very supportive of staff, very committed to resident experience, something Karen here might want to learn from. But you're a teacher, Mom whispered. You teach preschool. I did teach preschool. I loved it, but I also built a company on the side, and when someone wanted to buy it, I sold it. Then I kept teaching for a while because I enjoyed it and eventually transitioned to consulting and investing. Why didn't you tell us? Dad demanded. I try to remember when I said I'd changed jobs and was doing consulting work. You said consulting was just a fancy word for unemployment. When I mentioned I made some good investments, Derek said, I probably put $100 in an index fund. When I offered to help Charlotte with her business startup costs, she said she didn't need pity money from her struggling sister. Each example landed like a physical blow. I could see them remembering the memories clicking into place. But you still dress like Brittany gestured at my outfit. Like you shop at clearance sales. I do shop at clearance sales. I like a good deal. Why would I spend $300 on a shirt when I can get one I like just as much for $30? And your car, Derek started, is reliable, fuel efficient, and paid off. I don't care about cars. Why would I spend money on something I don't care about? Your apartment, Charlotte said weakly. You live in a one-bedroom apartment. I live in a 3-bedroom condo in Lincoln Park that I own outright. It has 1 bedroom because I don't need more space. Why would I maintain empty rooms? Dad sank into a nearby chair. This can't be real. It's very real, Dad. You're standing in the lobby of a clubhouse managed by a company I own. You just tried to cancel my pass on my own property. And for the past hour, you've been complaining about customer service to staff who report directly to me, while Karen Whitaker cheered you on with her little rule book. Margaret stepped forward. Mr. Patterson, I need to inform you that company policy requires respectful treatment of all staff members. The complaints you made to the front desk staff were noted. Miss Reynolds has instructed us to flag your party for owner review. Owner review? Mom looked panicked. What does that mean? It means every aspect of your stay and your HOA interactions will be monitored, I said quietly. Every charge, every activity, every interaction with staff or with Karen here. Any further issues and your event privileges can be revoked. Stay privileges. Dad's voice cracked. Maya, you can't be serious. You're going to kick us out. You kicked me out 2 hours ago. Told me I didn't belong here. Told me to find a motel I could afford. Told me I was embarrassing the family in front of Karen and the whole neighborhood. We didn't know that you owned the company or that I could actually afford to be here. I looked at each of them. Would it have mattered if I was just a teacher who'd saved up for this gala? Would I have belonged then? No one answered. That's what I thought. I turned to Margaret. The Patterson party and the HOA board can stay, but the owner review flag remains active. Any staff complaints, any behavioral issues, any problems at all, especially if Karen decides to start enforcing her favorite petty rules, I want to know immediately. Yes, ma'am. Mom reached for me, but I stepped back. I have a pass here. Room I paid for. I'm going to check in now and enjoy the facilities. You all can do the same. But if you approach me, if you harass me, if you try to have another family meeting about how I don't belong here, or if Karen tries to write me up one more time, I will have security escort you from the property. Are we clear? Dad's face was red. You can't do this. We're family. Family who told me I was an embarrassment. Family who didn't want me here and cheered when Karen threatened to fine me for my car. I kept my voice level. I'm giving you what you wanted. You get to enjoy your luxury gala without worrying about your poor sister counting pennies. I'll be here too, but you won't have to acknowledge me. You can pretend I don't exist, just like you've been pretending my success doesn't exist for 3 years. We didn't know about your success, Charlotte protested. You never told us. I tried to tell you. You didn't listen. You made assumptions about who I was and what I was worth, and you never questioned those assumptions. Not once in 3 years did any of you ask me about my work, my investments, my life. You just decided I was failing and treated me accordingly, while Karen used it as an excuse to make my life miserable with citations. Sarah handed me a key card. Room 412, Miss Reynolds, top floor, Lakeview. Your usual suite. Thank you, Sarah. I took the key, then looked back at my family one last time, and at Karen Whitaker, whose face had gone the color of spoiled milk. Enjoy your gala. Try to be kind to the staff. They work hard, and Karen, maybe ease up on the grass measurement for once. I walked toward the elevators, my rolling suitcase trailing behind me. Behind me, I could hear my family erupting into urgent whispered conversation and Karen sputtering something about this can't be right, but I didn't turn around. The elevator doors closed, and I leaned against the wall, suddenly exhausted. My phone buzzed. A text from James Hendricks. Margaret briefed me. Are you okay? I typed back, fine, just tired. Take the rest of the day. Decompress. I'll handle anything that comes up. Thanks, James. Another text, this time from a number I recognized as Charlotte's. Maya, please. We need to talk. This is insane. You can't just shut us out. Then Derek, you're being extremely immature about this. So we made a mistake. Get over it. Then Brittany, if you're really rich, why do you act so poor? That's honestly kind of manipulative. Then Mom, sweetheart, I'm sure this is all a misunderstanding. Let's have dinner tonight and work this out like adults. Then Dad, this is absurd. I'm your father. You will speak to me with respect. And finally, from Karen herself, this changes nothing. The rules still apply. I'll be reviewing your file, personally. I turned my phone off. The suite was beautiful. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the lake. A king bed with luxury linens, a marble bathroom with a soaking tub. I'd stayed here dozens of times while overseeing renovations and operations. It felt more like home than my family had in years. I ordered room service, changed into comfortable clothes, sat on the balcony, watching boats drift across the water while the sun set in shades of orange and gold. Somewhere in this clubhouse, my family was probably still talking about me, trying to understand, trying to reconcile the sister they thought they knew with the reality they just discovered. Maybe feeling guilty, maybe feeling angry, maybe both. But that wasn't my problem to solve. I'd spent 3 years being quietly successful while they assumed I was struggling. 3 years of gentle corrections that were ignored, of accomplishments that were dismissed, of trying to share my life with people who'd already decided what my life was, while Karen used every opportunity to make me feel small. I was done trying. Tomorrow I'd go to the spa, book a massage, maybe play a round of golf, enjoy the resort I'd worked hard to restore and maintain. And if I happened to see my family in the hallways or restaurants, or if Karen tried to glare at me from across the pool, I'd smile politely and keep walking. They wanted me to find a place I belonged. I had. It just wasn't with them. My phone, still off, sat on the nightstand. I knew when I turned it back on, there would be more messages, more demands for explanations, for conversations for me, to make them feel better about treating me poorly, while Karen plotted her next citation. But not tonight. Tonight, I was going to soak in the enormous bathtub, watch a movie on the premium television, and sleep in 1,000 thread count sheets at the clubhouse I owned through the company I owned. And tomorrow, I'd see if my family and Karen Whitaker could manage to get through one day without embarrassing themselves at my property. The next morning, I woke to the sound of birds and the distant hum of the golf course. I turned my phone on just long enough to see the flood of notifications, 43 new texts, 3 voicemails, and one very official-looking email from Karen titled Urgent Compliance Review. I deleted them all without reading. Instead, I ordered breakfast on the balcony, eggs Benedict, fresh fruit, and the strongest coffee the kitchen could brew. The view was perfect, the kind of view Karen loved to brag about in her monthly newsletters, while finding anyone whose curtains weren't the approved shade of ivory. I smiled into my coffee, thinking about how many times she'd knocked on my door over the years, clipboard in hand, lecturing me about maintaining property values, like my simple life was a personal attack on her kingdom. By 10 o'clock, I was in the spa getting the full treatment, massage, facial, and the works paid for with the owner's complimentary pass. No one dared question. The staff knew me now, whispered, "Good morning, Miss Reynolds," with genuine smiles the kind Karen never earned, no matter how many times she flashed her HOA President badge. Halfway through my massage, my phone buzzed again, this time from Margaret. "Just a heads up, the board is in the conference room, demanding a meeting with management. Karen is leading the charge, saying there must be some mistake and that your ownership doesn't override community standards." I chuckled. Let them meet. Record everything. If they raise their voices or threaten, staff flag it under the owner review. Already done. I spent the afternoon on the golf course alone, hitting balls with perfect calm, while my family and Karen no doubt seethed in their luxury suites. Derek tried to corner me near the pro shop, but I simply smiled and kept walking, security already on alert per my instructions. Charlotte left another voicemail, sounding tearful. Maya, we're sorry, we just didn't know, please call us. Mom texted a picture of the family dinner table with an empty seat. We miss you, honey. Dad sent a single line. This is ridiculous. Call me. Karen sent another email, this one CCNG, the entire board. As president, I insist on an emergency vote to review all management contracts. I forwarded every single one to James with a note. Owner review, file open. Monitor for compliance. By evening, the tension was thick enough to cut with a butter knife. I was having a quiet dinner on the clubhouse terrace when I saw them all gathered at a long table across the room, Karen at the head like a queen holding court, gesturing wildly with her fork, while my family nodded along desperately. I raised my glass of wine in their direction, just a small polite toast. Karen's face turned purple. Derek looked away. Mom actually teared up. It was the most satisfying meal I'd had in years, the kind of moment where the dark humor of it all hit me full force, how these people who preach community and family values had spent years treating me like an inconvenience until the second they realized the power they'd been abusing was actually mine. Later that night, James called. They tried to pass a motion to terminate the management contract. Karen led the charge, saying it was in the best interest of the neighborhood. The vote failed, obviously, since the contract is ironclad, and I control the LLC that holds the majority vote for the properties I own here. But they're panicking, Maya. Derek was yelling about lawsuits, Charlotte was crying, and Karen looked like she might actually explode. I laughed softly. Good. Let them sweat. Keep the flag active. Any more nonsense, and I'll revoke their event passes one by one. You got a boss. The following days blurred into a beautiful routine. I swam in the private pool, booked the yacht cruise without a second thought, and even joined a wine tasting where the sommelier treated me like royalty. My family kept their distance after one particularly awkward encounter in the lobby where Dad tried to apologize, and I simply said, "Enjoy your stay," before walking away. Karen avoided me entirely, but I heard through Margaret that she'd been unusually quiet at the board meeting, her usual tirades replaced by nervous fidgeting. The power shift was delicious, the kind of slow burn satisfaction that made every petty fine I'd ever paid feel worth it. On the final night of the gala, the big anniversary dinner arrived. I wore a simple black dress, nothing flashy, because I still liked what I liked, and sat at a private table near the window. My family was across the room, trying their best to pretend everything was normal, but the tension was palpable. Karen was nowhere to be seen. Apparently she'd suddenly remembered a prior engagement, according to the staff. As the toast began, my father stood up, cleared his throat, and gave a stiff speech about family and community that rang hollower than ever. When it was over, he caught my eye for a brief moment and gave the smallest nod, almost an apology. I nodded back, not because I forgave them, but because I was done carrying their assumptions. The gala ended with fireworks over the lake, and I watched from my balcony, sipping one last glass of wine. My phone finally quiet after days of frantic messages. The family had given up on demanding explanations, and Karen had gone radio silent, probably busy rewriting her resume now that her precious standards had been exposed as the joke they always were. I thought back over the week, the initial humiliation, the shocked faces, the desperate attempts to save face. There was a dark humor in it all, how the same people who lectured me about fitting in had spent years enforcing rules that only served their egos, while I quietly owned the very system they worshipped. The next morning, I checked out of the suite, but not before stopping by Margaret's office to thank the staff personally with generous bonuses. "You all handled this beautifully," I told them. "Keep doing what you're doing." The owner review on the Patterson party is lifted, but the board gets one more month of monitoring, just in case Karen gets any ideas. Margaret smiled. They've been model guests since the reveal. Even Karen sent a very polite email apologizing for any misunderstandings. I laughed. Of course she did. Fake politeness is her specialty. As I drove out of the circular driveway this time, for good my Subaru, feeling lighter than ever, I glanced in the rearview mirror one last time. The clubhouse gleamed in the morning sun. The same place that had tried to make me feel small now stood as a reminder that real power doesn't need to shout. My family would go back to their lives, probably whispering about me for years, spinning the story to make themselves the victims. Karen would likely step down quietly, or at least tone down her clipboard crusades. And me? I go back to my condo, back to the occasional consulting work, and back to living exactly the way I wanted, simple car, clearance rack, clothes, and all. Because the best revenge isn't loud or flashy. It's quiet. It's patient. It's letting them dig their own hole with their own ridiculous rules until the moment you pull the rug out and watch them tumble. I smiled the whole drive home, the kind of smile that comes from finally being seen on your own terms. The neighborhood would never be the same, and neither would I. And somewhere in the distance, I could almost hear Karen's clipboard snapping shut for good.